You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Did you know we have a wildlife heritage museum in Mississippi where you can go and see anything from handmade fishing lures to a dugout canoe made by Native Americans in Mississippi thousands of years ago? We're going to learn about that and more with you today. Billy Johnson here on the show from the Mississippi Wildlife Heritage Museum in Leland, Mississippi.
Mississippi Outdoors is sponsored by Entergy Mississippi. Entergy is building a stronger and cleaner grid to power a brighter future and protect our great outdoors for generations to come.
You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. You may not have known that this place is in Leland, Mississippi. We're going to learn all about it today. The Mississippi Wildlife Heritage Museum. Did I get it right?
You did.
And Billy Johnson from the Heritage Museum there in Leland, Mississippi with us today. Billy, welcome to the show.
I appreciate y'all having us.
All right. So the big, broad, open-ended question for those that are not familiar, what is the Mississippi Wildlife Heritage Museum?
Well, it just pretty much tells us the evolution of hunting and fishing and the great outdoors in Mississippi from the time of the Indians, to now. Mm-hmm. I mean, when people think about Indians, you think about the Plains Indians you see on the Westerns, and they're horse culture people. Yeah. But our Indians in Mississippi were boat culture people. And the first highways in the state were the streams, the rivers and the creeks and all. And I mean, they would move their villages up and down those streams, hunting for food. I mean, they, killed all the rabbits out of a certain set of woods. They just go on down and that's the way it started in Mississippi. And when the first settlers came, a lot of those Indians that were good hunters and fishermen, passed their knowledge of the game and fish in the area down to them, and it's just down from one generation to the next is the way it's progressed.
Yeah. And so in terms of if I go to the Wildlife Heritage Museum in Leland and I start to look, the things and the eras that I'm going to learn about hunting and fishing here in Mississippi go all the way back.
Yeah, it goes all the way back. We got like a 700-year-old dugout canoe.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, those guys would, they didn't have the tools that we've got now, and they would take their little axes and all and get the limbs off of a log and light fires down the top of it and burn it out and then finish it out,
And you have one of those in the museum?
Yeah.
How'd you get your hands on that?
A guy called one day and just said that he had one, that they had dug it up on his place, and he gave one to the state of Mississippi, and it was a fire, or it burned that one up. And did we want it? And I told him, that we did. Okay. And there must have been some strong Indians. All I'm gonna say, because those things are heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah. Why is the Wildlife Heritage Museum in Leland?
Well, I guess because it was, my idea. Mm-hmm. Let me take it back a little farther. For 15 or 16 years, I was the outdoor writer for the Delta Democrat Times in Greenville and the Leland Progress in Leland and other magazines and stuff. And I've always been fascinated about old hunting and fishing pictures. Mm-hmm. So most of the time when you write a 500, 600, 700 page word article, you can't use but a picture or two. Yeah. But through the years, I always would oftentimes spend more money than I sold the article for getting pictures copied. Back then you had to copy them. It wasn't a scanning deal, like we did now. So anyway, after about 700 articles, I ended up with a whole room full of old hunting and fishing pictures. And I was fixing to go hunting out west in Montana. And my wife, Cindy, said, I need you to do something for me. And I said, well, just write it down. I'll do it. I'll get it back. She said, no, you can do this when you go. And said, I don't hunt, and I do fish with y'all a little bit, you and my son Ben. And said, sometimes when you're gone, I just get to looking at these pictures. And you need to think of something to do with them because it's over 1,000 pictures in there. And if they're interesting to me, they'd be interesting to other people. So of all things that happened, I always would go across North Dakota and back across, going to and from Montana. And this particular time, the interstate was closed across North Dakota. So I dropped down to the Black Hills of South Dakota, and I had about 100-mile area that wasn't frozen, where the interstate wasn't frozen. And my dad, Clint Johnson, was a pharmacist, and I told him where I was. He said, "Can you get to Wall, South Dakota?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Go there." And I said, "Why?" He said, "You'll see." And it was the guy 100 years ago, the Wall drugstore was right on the edge of the Badlands across South Dakota and the Black Hills. And he would give wagon trains and settlers and water, free water. And he just opened up, several museums, like a Plains Indian Museum and Black Hills Museum. And when I walked in there, it was like an epiphany. I mean, just all of a sudden, it's just like an acorn hitting me on my head. This is what we're going to do with those pictures. Uh-huh. So when I got home, we had about a 14,000 square foot old hardware store building in Leland. And I asked the people that owned it, it had been closed several years, and they donated it, to the museum. And we started the Mississippi Wildlife Heritage Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And it just kind of went from there. I mean, we knew we wanted it to have all the major types of hunting and fishing in the museum. And, we work with people like Mark McPhail from Meridian, and he's the foremost turkey call collector in Mississippi. And, it's a lot of difference when Mark McPhail calls these old turkey call makers and wants them to put them in the museum than Billy Johnson. Yeah. And I mean, all of a sudden, just one after one. I mean, when you walk in the museum, we start off with, 5,000 and 6,000 year old arrowheads and deer pictures from, back when people hunted on horses and hounds, and they had knee boots and double barreled hammer shotguns, and then it goes into the turkey call making.
Wow. Okay, and like I was looking through some of the pictures that on the website that scroll through, and it's fishing also.
Oh yeah.
I saw one picture that looked to me like a display of all kinds of old lures and. I've always collected lures. Really? So those are yours?
Yeah. They were the start of were mine, and they had this big boat bin that was like 12 feet long and had all these little cubicles where you put the different size boats and nuts and lock washers and flat washers and all. And I said, we could make this into a collection of the lures. So then that's what we started with because I mean, it doesn't matter now whether it's a turkey call or a lure or whatever. In the beginning, they were hand made out of wood, handcrafted out of wood. Yeah. And now they're plastic.
Right.
And I mean, this store, Joe Turner Hardware Store, it was a man named E.O. Mitchell that he and his friend Henry Milner were telegraph operators for the railroad, and they were turkey hunting fanatics, but it wasn't any turkeys. So they, when they took down the telegraph lines and put up telephone lines, those old telegraph lines were on 100-year-old cedar poles. And Mr. Milner said that it was a widow woman had a country store between Vaden and Winona, and her husband had an old turkey call from Montgomery Ward. And they measured that call and started using those old 100-year-old cedar poles into making calls. And where it went from there is, E.O. Mitchell's got calls in the Smithsonian. What they would do, these land-based terrapins, turtles would wherever a car could cross the tracks, they'd get in there and they would go left or right, and they'd get between the railroad, the rails, and they couldn't get out, and they'd end up dying. So the section line workers started bringing them to Mr. Milner and E.O. Mitchell, and they turned them upside down and put a piece of those 100-year-old cedar poles. You know, they put a piece of that cedar in there for a resonator board, and then they took a hackberry stem and a piece of a corn cob, and the railroad used to have these canvas money sacks, and like if I was in charge of one railroad station, and I was going to send the money to you, I'd put the money in that thing, and they had this hot wax, and then put a stamp on it. And if that stamp better be,
not broken.
Broken when you got there. So they started dipping those hackberry strikers in the end of that hot wax, and then they had put a piece of a corn cob down there, and that's where they made those. That's the call that's in the Smithsonian.
Is a turtle shell.
Is a turtle shell,
and a stem and a piece of corn cob.
Yeah.
That created the vibration and the sound.
That's right.
That turned into what we have now.
That's right. And no two turtle shells are shaped alike. And you can get in the middle of them, and you'll get a certain pitch. And as you go to the side where the shell is shallower, you get a higher pitch. And from that point, Mr. Milner and Mr. Mitchell went two different ways. Mr. Milner wanted to make turkey calls and spinnerbaits and give them to kids wanting to learn how to hunt and fish.
Okay.
Mr. Mitchell wanted to sell his. And Mr. Milner said that, he knew if he ever started selling turkey calls, it'd be an episode that would last the rest of his life. So he just gave his away.
Okay.
And, they taught a lot of people how to use those calls, and as they got older, they taught a lot of people how to make calls,
how to make their own homemade calls.
That's right.
And you have some of those displayed in the museum.
Oh yeah, we got turkey. We got Mississippi handmade turkey calls from 47 different call makers in the museum.
That go back how you think? Ballpark.
Well, we got some old Indian wing bones.
Okay.
And I mean, they go way back. I mean,
Right.
They found some in an excavation in Tennessee that were 6,500 years old, they said. But that's what the Indians did. The Indians took those wing bones, those hen wing bone calls, and would make a call out of it. And then they would take a sawbriar leaf. Sawbriars are green in the winter, and put it between their lips and make a call with it. So that's the sound that these call makers were trying to emulate. What the Indians used.
Indians did.
So
isn't that amazing?
Oh yeah.
All right, so it's fascinating, and it sounds like to me that as long as we could sit here, you've got stories about things connected to not only hunting and fishing in Mississippi, but directly to things and items that are in that museum.
Oh yeah, we'll go a week or 10 days, as long as you feed me every 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing. God bless Mississippi with vast natural resources, and those resources have created a culture of outdoor loving people. I mean, 760 or 70,000 people hunted, fished, or both in Mississippi last year. That doesn't count the campers and canoe people and bird watchers and hikers and and all that.
Sure.
So I mean, you can just take the Mississippi River. That's more natural resources than some states have.
Right.
I mean, with the hunting and the fishing, and it's the center of the Mississippi Flyway, for duck, for waterfowl, and that doesn't count. Then you go down and you got the Gulf Coast. That's a whole nother hunting and fishing culture. And then, the government built these big flood reservoirs that turned in to tremendous crappie lakes. You know, Arca-Butler, Sardis, and Enid, and Grenada. I mean, this Wired to Fish network came up 4 or 5 years ago with the top 10 trophy crappie lakes in America. Well, guess what? The top 5 are Mississippi. So, you know, where does it stop? I mean, it doesn't stop. You know, it just and I mean, you know, it's we got a wall of fishermen with big catfish that were caught from all of the different rivers in the state. And it's fascinating.
That is, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I was just talking the other day about the last couple of years, the big Bill Dance, you know, catfish tournament that's coming to Vicksburg. I think this year is going to be the 3rd year.
Yeah.
And of course they have, you know, the winning team wins, whatever it is, going to win $50,000 this year. But the lunker gets somewhere in the neighborhood of about $10,000 if you have the big fish. And so they're weighing in individual fish in that tournament. Did last year that were 60, 70 pound catfish that were catching right there.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of things have evolved like that. I mean, in 1936, an accountant from Greenville named Tom Walsh won the very first World Duck Calling Championship in Stuttgart, Arkansas, and he won like a $3.10 canvas coat. Now when they win it, it's way, you know, it's way on up there. You know? So all of this stuff, you know, we live in a time of instantaneous communication now.
Right.
And I mean, it doesn't matter what generation you're talking about, but an older hunter can sit a kid down and teach them more in 10 minutes about what they're interested in the outdoors than they could learn in 40 years. And they might not, if they don't get on the right trail, they might not ever, you know, figure it out. So, you know, and this is what a museum is. A museum is a place where kids come in and they learn about the generations before them. You know, how they did things. The Indians would take bodock trees and whittle them down and make bows, and they'd take rattlesnake hides and soak them in water and put one on each limb, the upper and lower limb, and when those hides dried, it would give the bow more strength. But these guys, these Indians, they made their own arrows, they made their own bows. You know, they took these awls and stuff and took the inside of a deer hide and got all the meat off of it and made clothes for the kids. You know, so I mean, you know, it's just amazing how much of this hunting and fishing history has just gone from one generation down to the next. You know, one thing I always thought was interesting, of course, when I came along and they were running deer with dogs, the guys that'd be on the road with CB radios. Well, you know, way back then they had these horns, that they would blow. And I ran into one of those old guys and I said, well, what was the language? He said, oh, it was real simple. He said, 1 toot on the horn means, you know, where are you? 2 toots is I am here. 3 toots is, you know, the dead call is the deer is dead, and 4 toots mean that the hunt's over.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, you know, and to go from there to, you know, now a kid kills a deer and they got a cell phone and take out there, you know, and I always like the story. I carried a boy, Cameron Moss, deer hunting with me, and it was like 15 degrees on Christmas Eve, and he shot a deer. Well, I didn't know about all this texting and everything. Well, his daddy had a cleaners in Leland, you know, clothes cleaning business. And so he took a picture of the deer and texted it to his daddy. And about that time, my wife Cindy's coming down the street, and Aaron, Cameron's daddy, goes running out there, hollering and screaming. Well, Cindy thought somebody had robbed the cleaners, you know. You know what I mean? Used to, you know, when we used to hunt on these river islands, you'd never know who killed what till the end of the hunt.
Yeah.
You know, like our dogs would cross the White River, you know, and they would get with the other dog guys, and that's how they'd find out, what people had killed. And I mean, now, a kid killed a big fish.
Yeah.
When they catch a big fish, they take a picture of it, put the big mama fish back in the lake, and, they got a memory forever. So,
sure. Yeah.
It's
really interesting too. The photo thing, it sounds to me like, again, a big stack of thousands of photos going way back was sort of the genesis of what for you led to the creation of the museum.
Yeah.
And you're describing now, when 10 years from now, 20, 30 years from now, I don't know if we're going to have a physical stack of photos, but we'll have the digital kind. They'll be here somewhere. We're not going to have a big stack in a box somewhere like you did.
No. And, oftentimes, you never know what you're going to run into. It was a lady from the North Delta, and she called and wanted to talk to me about the museum and said she had a lot of stuff that belonged to her husband. So I go up there, and it says her husband had been dead 17 years at this point, and it was as if he was still alive. In the office, she still cleaned his office every day. She dusted off his ducks and deer and took a wet rag and wiped his fish off and everything. And she just said that she wanted to keep it just like he was there. And of course, I could, it's an emotional thing. I could understand that. And about 3 years later, she called me and asked me would I come back and see her again. And she said, Billy, we had a bad storm up here about a week ago. And lightning hit real close, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't go back to sleep. And I got to thinking that my husband would want his collection where kids could see it and learn from it. And I want you to take it, I want you to put it in the museum. So you never know what goes through, goes through people's minds.
Sure.
But
well,
I mean,
and so what a resource it is, really. Not just for the customer or the consumer, but for historians and families who have their own.
Oh yeah, we got a guy, Leland James, who's in the museum, and he's one of the state's pioneer turkey hunters, but he's a real good taxidermist, and he said that being the taxidermy business, that you get to hear the story twice.
Uh-huh.
When the guy brings the deer to you, and then when he comes back and gets it. And we started working on this museum in 2012, and we opened in 2017. And about 2013, I was in Cody, Wyoming, and I was in the Buffalo Bills Center for the West. And I walked around a corner, and it was the Wyoming Outdoor Hall of Fame. And Theodore Roosevelt and Kurt Gowdy and all these people were in there. And so I got to thinking about it on the way home, and I called Minor Buchanan, who had written a book about Holt Collier guiding Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And I said, have you ever nominated Holt Collier for the Sports Hall of Fame in Jackson? He said about 20 times, and never even heard anything back from him. So just kind of planted another seed, and we came back and we started the Mississippi Outdoor Hall of Fame, and it's inside the museum, and it tells a lot of stories. Billy Joe Cross, who was executive director of the what was then the Game and Fish Commission, he had like 15 or 20 different cookbooks, and he had all these nationally televised fishing shows, and he taught us how to fillet brim and crappie and all, and how to cook, all these different kind of stuff, and then his big fishing buddy, Eddie Slater, back then when I was a kid, you fished with minnows for crappie, and he started making jigs, and those two together, I mean, they won like 7 state crappie fishing championships, and I often wonder how would it have been in a boat with them where one of them changed the way we fish and the other one changed the way we cook.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of interesting stuff in there. Jack Dudley won the world turkey calling championship with his natural voice. You know, and he's from
no diaphragm, no nothing, just
no, just his voice.
Wow.
That's the way the Indians would do too. You know, from Decatur, Mississippi, and you know that old guy Henry Milner I was telling you about. I was asking him, and this time he's in his 90s. I said, you know, how bad was it during the Depression? He was talking. He said, well, Billy, there's a widow woman lived across the holler from us, and she was so poor she didn't even have a match. Said if her fire went out, if her cook stove went out, one of her kids would come over to our house with a metal bucket, and we'd stir the coals up with a shovel and give them to her, and she'd take them back across there. And said, my daddy was farming me out to a neighbor. I was picking cotton for $3 a day, and said it started raining, and I went out here on the Big Black River, and there was this old fisherman named Zach May. And he said I was fascinated with him, and he knew how to catch these great big catfish down in these blue holes. And he'd take these pollywog catfish and said, the first time I took some fish to town and sold them for $3, you know, he said it didn't take long for me to figure out that I liked to fish better than I did pick cotton. As long as I brought that $3 home, you know, daddy was happy. So a lot of the evolution of hunting and fishing came out of necessity. Mm. You know, I mean, you got guys like, I mean, I'm 71, and when I started deer hunting, all the men wore Army surplus clothes.
Okay.
You know, you got people like Fox Haas that came along and made, you know, a better camo patterns and made out of better materials. Mm-hmm. You know,
born out of necessity, right?
That's right.
That saying,
that's right.
Necessity, and the father of invention.
That's right. And like Will Primos came along, you know, speak the language, you know, making all these calls. And I was in Havre, Montana, 2,200 miles away from Leland, and they got these North 40 air outfitters, and I turned in there. And it was right there in the corner. It was a Primos poster, and it was a Mossy Oak poster. Mm. And man, I teared up. I said, man, these are Mississippi guys that are helping people this far off, away from home. You know, so, I mean, the Mississippi Outdoor Hall of Fame, you know, I mean, it's like Holt Collier's in there. Mm-hmm. You got to realize that until 1932, Mississippi was the last state in the Union to have a game and fish department. And a lady named Fannie Cook, county fairs were big back then, and she'd set up booths at county fairs and get people to sign a petition. And Governor Connor signed that bill in 1932, establishing the Game and Fish Commission. Mm-hmm. At that era of time, during the Depression, people hunting deer for meat and all, it's like 1,500 deer in the whole state. So the Game and Fish Commission starts trapping deer and moving them from areas that had them to areas that didn't. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Billy Joe Cross was foremost in that. Mm-hmm. And so by 1965, by conservation efforts established by the Game and Fish Commission, we had 250,000 deer in Mississippi. Mm. And the annual harvest was like 25,000 a year. Okay. Now we got 2 million deer and the annual harvest is 250,000. And I mean, the same way with turkey. Mm-hmm. The Fish and Game Department had a guy named Wayne Strider who figured out how to trap these turkeys. He was a game warden up in Coahoma County. So he and a farmer named Pee Wee Horton and Billy Joe Cross would go to these hunting clubs up and down the river. Turkey population is either going up or going down. It's never stable. Right. When you get too many, they get diseases. So what they did, they would take them over in the hills, and like Toxie Haas's dad, Fox Haas, mm-hmm. was instrumental in getting them to put the turkeys out in Clay County and up there. So now, you got turkeys, you got little kids being able to hunt turkeys because people like Billy Joe Cross and Fox Haas, they gave back. Mm-hmm. They gave back more than they took, mm-hmm. and they would go up there to Kentucky where they had these strip mines, and they were refurbishing and restoring these areas. Well, hell, they didn't have no turkeys, and we didn't have no bighorn deer, so they swapped. And I mean, when they found out that Pee Wee Horton was terminally ill, the Kentucky Game and Fish Commission had him up there. They had a Pee Wee Horton Day up there, and they made him an honorary commissioner. So I mean, Mississippi hunters and fishermen have affected and made the world better farther away than just Mississippi. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And
that's what the Outdoor Hall of Fame tells you. It tells you about about people like Fannie Cook. You got a Museum of Natural Science down here, mm-hmm. that teaches kids about everything there is to know about the outdoors in Mississippi. Well, that's her baby. Uh-huh. She started that. She was the executive director of it. And a bunch of, she trained people how to preserve all these different species of fish and game in the state. And I mean, yeah. it's important,
and it's an incredible resource too.
Oh Lord, yeah.
You go look at it now and walk through. There's a lot of people that drive by it every day have no idea what's in there and how extensive it is. For you grew up in the Delta?
Yeah.
Okay. And so your love for the outdoors, hunting and fishing, kind of came naturally.
It did. I mean, to my way of thinking, in every generation of boys, it's kids that wake up on Saturday morning. Some of them are going to work on a bicycle. Some of them are going to go play football. One of them going to get a BB gun and go out there and try to hunt or fishing pole and make him a lure. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think hunting and fishing are called sports, but I think they would be more accurately described as just natural instinct within people, And I mean, what the Game and Fish Commission has done is made those opportunities more widespread across the state. Yeah. You got to realize there was an era of time in there where Bob Tyler was the head of the state parks in Mississippi. You had Paul Ott.
Yeah.
Would listen to the Eagle on the radio. You had Melvin Tingle with Mississippi Outdoors. Yeah. And as quick as Bob Tyler and them would get a new park or a new lake built, then they'd put it on the radio and TV, and then they spread it around. And I mean, you ain't got to go all over the country to spend a lifetime hunting and fishing. Mississippi State Parks, I mean, from Tishomingo County all the way down to, the Gulf Coast. If you like the outdoors, it's there for you. So, what if Fannie Cook never had the idea for a Game and Fish Commission? I mean, so it goes all the way back,
sure,
to, wanting to preserve things for the future generations.
Sure. Which is the Heritage Museum in Leland. That's part of that same thing. It's in under the same umbrella. Is it open 5 days, 6 days?
It's open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday from 10 to 5.
Okay.
And no matter what you like to do, it's in there. Uh-huh. Hunting and fishing in Mississippi.
Yeah. So I could go to Leland, and really all in one day. I could go to the Jim Henson Museum, and I could also go to the Mississippi Outdoors Heritage Museum.
Yeah, and then we got the Highway 61 Blues Museum about the blues heritage.
That's right.
And then we've opened Our Town and Beyond Museum.
You mentioned that a couple of times.
It's Our Town and Beyond. I mean, Leland was first a railroad town, and then when they were clearing the Delta, it was a timber town. We had vast amounts of southern hardwood timber. I mean, at one point, the Mississippi Delta was the largest uninterrupted stand of southern bottomland hardwoods in the world. When they got it all cleared, or to a point where you could farm a lot of it, then we went to we were Cotton Town. Now we're Cultural Heritage Town. And I mean we got pictures of all those old country stores, and like you and I were talking about all the athletes that have come through Leland. So. Yeah, you better spend a couple of days. We've got some good restaurants. You ain't gonna starve up there.
Now,
part of the world.
How did you become a newspaper writer?
Girl I grew up with had a Leland paper, and I was telling somebody a hunting story, and she said, "Stop, go home and write that story down."
Okay.
And it ended up I've done a couple of books, and about 700 or 800 articles. So, I didn't want my outdoor heroes, the guys that taught me when I was a kid. I didn't want their memories, their stories. I wanted my son to know who they were, and it's a unique thing in Mississippi, Matt, because the best deer and turkey hunters in my father's generation, my dad was born in 1927.
Okay.
They didn't have deer and turkey to hunt. The family would send them out with a handful of 22 shorts and a single shot, and they'd shoot bullfrogs in the summer. They'd hunt squirrels, But if you can slip up on 8 squirrels and shoot a limit of squirrels in the head with a 22 iron sight, in any hunting situation in the world, you're going to be successful. You have the skills to be successful.
Right.
So, it's a great time to be growing up hunting and fishing in Mississippi. We used to have like a couple of 6-day seasons and a 5-day season, and squirrel hunting was a real big thing. And like in the fall, we'd squirrel hunt to the first deer season. And then after the first deer season, maybe we'd had a frost or two, it'd kill those wolves, it'd get on the rabbits, and we'd rabbit hunt. Then you'd have another deer season. By that time, the ducks would be down. Now you deer hunting from the 1st of October to the end of January.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is it hadn't always been that way.
Right.
Generations before us have not had the opportunities to deer and turkey hunt in parts of the state. You take Kosciuszko, Atala County. Their first deer season was 1961.
What you're saying is there may be some of us now that don't realize how good we have it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. They don't realize how good we have it. We've had some setbacks. I mean, the quail, definitely, the game and fish are working on it. The quail have had setbacks, and these Asian carp getting in the river and messing that up, for the crappie fishing and all in it. So, but what I'm saying as a whole is there's a heck of a lot of hunting and fishing opportunities in the 82 counties in Mississippi that if Fannie Cook never had come up with the idea and Governor Connor signed the bill, and people like Billy Joe Cross and Pee Wee Horton and Wayne Strider, Fox Haas, Fox Haas has got a saying that the good that men do will be here long after they're gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's little kids, Mr. Hayes can't hunt much anymore, but it's little kids up there learning to turkey hunt because of his efforts, because of people like Billy Joe Cross. They would get do these secret releases where they'd turn turkeys loose,
Yeah.
One funny story Henry Milner used to tell me that he and E.O. Mitchell went down to the Buckatana Wildlife Reserve down in South Mississippi. And everywhere they went, people were sitting by them at the cafes, and, they could tell they were listening to what they were saying. Well, they were making whiskey down there in that thing, and they turned a bunch of hogs loose. He said they were OIC hogs, some kind of hog. But when they'd make that whiskey, they'd dump that mash out, and those hogs would eat that mash.
Okay.
And it'd run them crazy. And he said, Mr. Milner said he was sitting there and a big long snout came between some palmetto bushes and said he saw something in the hog hair standing up on the back of his head. He said, so from then on, wherever they turkey hunted, it would be close enough to a tree with some low limbs where they'd run up.
They could go up.
Yeah, they could go up the tree. So, it's
Wait, was the hogs were turned loose on purpose to?
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be any evidence. Yeah.
They get rid of the evidence, but in turn, it made them crazy for a little while.
Yeah, they made them mean.
I guess so. Yeah.
But it's a lot of areas of the state. I mean, look at all the hundreds of thousands of people that come to Mississippi to crappie fish.
Sure, right.
Or to go on the Gulf Coast. Mm-hmm. So I mean, when I said that God blessed Mississippi with vast natural resources, He also blessed Mississippi with conservation-minded outdoorsmen and sportsmen that have carried it out and spread it out and taught people. I mean, how many kids is Bill Dance taught to fish? People like that. Roger Stegall up there at
I was
IU.
going to say, I saw a boat. There's some guys pulling a boat headed north on the Natchez Trace today. This was early in the morning, just as the sun was coming up. And I thought, okay, most likely they're going to Pickwick on a trip, and they want to catch smallmouth. Most likely is what they're going to do.
There was a guy from Greenville named Herman Caluette, and he was a Cajun, and he won the World Duck Calling Championship, calling with his natural voice. And during the 27 flood, he's in that book, Rising Tide, that John Barry wrote, and he rescued over 200 people, out of trees, out of tops of barns, and he and a guy named Herb Parsons. Herb Parsons was a Winchester representative, and he was an exhibition shooter. He could throw up them little balls and shoot, And one thing that Herb Parsons always said was, he said a lot of things, but to me the most meaningful thing he ever said is, if you hunt with your kids today, you won't have to hunt for them tomorrow. And all over Mississippi, it's guys that have bought a piece of land and dug a lake, dug a pond out, built a cabin where they go with their whole families now. And, I said something earlier about hunting season used to be measured in days, and now it's measured in months. It's also, you got a lot of female hunters and fishermen. And, so it's not just a man, hunting isn't just a man thing anymore.
You told a story earlier. You mentioned that your wife, Cindy, said, she did some fishing, but she didn't hunt with you. Does she now? Does she ever go hunting with you? No?
She hunts for me every once in a while when she can't find me.
Oh, she hunts for you. I mean, hunt with you.
Our kids hunting. I got a bunch of grandkids that hunts. But, Cindy's Italian, and she's taken all the recipes that her mom and her grandmom taught her, about cooking, and put that Italian flair to it,
That's great.
It's a hunting is a more family oriented experience now.
Yeah. If I come to the museum in Leland, will you be there?
Yeah.
Are you there most of the time?
If I'm not off hunting or fishing somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you my number, just call me, and you need to come check it out.
I really do want to come check it out. It's a neat story. So idea popped up, 15 years ago?
Yeah,
And
about
then,
2012.
And it's been in existence for about 10 years.
We opened the museum in June of 2017.
Okay.
And
So
we've
8
expanded.
years.
Yeah, we've expanded, and when we got the Outdoor Hall of Fame in there, we added some more to it. So
that's great. If someone is listening and they haven't been, I think listening to you and some of the stories and describing it might be enough to encourage them to go. But what would you say to them to encourage them to come to Leland and come on? And does it cost to enter?
Yeah, it's admission is $10.
Okay.
Or kids, or under 16 are free.
Okay. But what would you say to them to encourage them to come to the museum?
The museum teaches people what all our great state has to offer. And this whole culture, this outdoor culture of people that have developed, evolved from the time of the Indians to now. And, everybody's got their own feeling about things, but when I'm hunting or fishing by myself, I feel closer to God than any other time. And it's just me. It's like when you go to church and it's 100 people there, you're sharing God with 100 people. But when you go out there and you watch a sunrise, and it's just you out there. People ask me, especially with these blues people that come, what I need to do in Mississippi. I said, well, you need to see a sunrise on Lake Washington, and you need to see a sunset on the Mississippi River. And if you go out on the Mississippi River and watch the sun set, it'll make you realize how small one man is in the universe, and how this river, and something that drains 41% of the United States.
Right.
But the museum, by and large, the kids are real attracted to the alligators and the bears.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of great stories in there. One of the pioneer bow hunters in Mississippi, Billy Ellis from Lexington, he and Fred Bear were big friends, and they just put Billy Ellis into the Pope and Young Hall of Fame. So you look, Paul Elias is in the National Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. They just put Alfred Williams from Jackson, in there. Preston Pittman, he won a world turkey calling championship, like 5 times. So he's in the, in that Hall of Fame. All these bird dog trainers, Garland Pretty and all those people are in the Field Trial Hall of Fame, up in Tennessee. So, Mississippi has produced, like the Delta, everybody talks about all of the athletes and, all of the musicians. I put the sportsmen and their ingenuity and their innovativeness that have come from the Mississippi Delta, I put them up against anybody in the world.
Very cool. All right, last question for you. You mentioned the dugout canoe that's at the museum.
Yeah.
Some of the other things we talked about. What is your one favorite piece of memorabilia that's in the museum? That may not even be a fair question, but if you had one favorite piece of memorabilia.
Depends on what day it is. Henry Milner, because I really got to know him, and the turkey calls that he made, and he would make his own nets where you'd just take a little square piece of wood and make where the knots would be the same, and lay that net out on a piece of a table and put beeswax all over one side of it and let it dry a couple of days. And, Mr. Milner's it tells what one man can do if they want to do it bad enough. When he was making his own lures and teaching kids, everything that he did, he gave back way more than he took. That mindset, what are you going to what are you going to do for these kids out here? You're going to teach them to hunt and fish, and try to keep them out of trouble. There's a lot more trouble out there in the world. I don't know if it's more trouble, but they know about it better than we did.
What was it you said? You quoted a guy, if you hunt with your kids now, you won't have to hunt for them.
Herb Parsons, if you hunt with your kids today, you won't have to hunt for them tomorrow.
That's great. That's great.
And, one thing that kids like is to be able to come to a camp and maybe they shot a deer and nobody else did, and they got to feed the camp. Mm-hmm. Their meat fed the camp, Yeah. Every deer you shoot's not going to be a trophy. But being able to share it, in my lifetime, my best trophies are the memories I've got hunting with my dad and my son. Mm-hmm. And it's just hard to beat that. Hard to beat that.
For sure. It's hard to beat getting to talk to you today too, Mr. Johnson. I really have enjoyed it. Thank you for coming. It's great to meet you, and I can't wait to get up to the museum.
You need to.
I'll do it.
All right.
Thank you. Billy Johnson with the Mississippi Wildlife Heritage Museum. It's in Leland. I'll maybe see you up there, and we'll see you outdoors.